Hello everyone, this is Leo from the Monkeys Making Misplaced channel. Today I bring you the fourth installment of our Units to Buy-In series. For this one we're going to talk about the Nation of Beasts, Stoicheia, and what units you might be interested in for future decks, current decks, things like that. But before that, just like in previous episodes, let me go over the generic spiel. These first few slides will be similar in each video, but since I can't know which of the 6 nations you might pick to start, I'll go over each of them in their respective video. There were certain restrictions that I put in place when coming up with the list of units. For instance, I don't talk about the orders, be they normal, blitz, or set. I only choose to talk about units themselves. I also include units that certain archetypes might need, but avoided those that were maybe too bland. Something like plus 5k isn't that exciting unless it has something else attached to it. We will go on increasing grade from 0 to 3. I have group cards with similar effects and left those with more unique effects for the end of each grouping. This series has been performing decently well for our channel. I mean, we're pretty small still, so I appreciate all support for it. And with that, let's move on to zeros. Not much to say here. It's very self-explanatory. You should get a set of effect triggers. They can be expensive, but they're a worthwhile investment since they can go in all your decks. Following that, we have the over trigger. Again, obvious you want to pick up your over trigger, but now we also have the red and blue generic over triggers that you should get at least one of, right? I mean, who knows? Maybe your deck might prefer to play it. In Stoicheia's case, I do believe a lot of decks would want to play the red over trigger. I have seen some decks play the blue one, but I would think that the red one is probably the best, but to each their own. And then we'll go into grade ones. This is still part of the general stuff because we have perfect cards here. You should obviously get some perfect cards, not much to say, right? And then following that, we have card draw, starting with Adhesive Threat Mutant Actiastiki, who can counterblast 1 and kill 2 other rear guards to draw a card and gain +5. This is a once per turn ability that can be used every turn, right? If you can keep pumping out things like tokens, or if your deck can keep bringing other units back, you can keep drawing cards, right? He's from set 5. I think he sits at around 70 cents, somewhere around there. So again, we're not breaking the bank. Then we're moving on to Lively Rhythm Biara. Whenever the attack sheet boosted hits a Vanguard, you can put a grade 2 or less card from your soul and draw a card. She was in the trial deck for Leonor, and she's about 5 cents right now. I do believe this card's pretty good as it can draw you cards and create soul. Following that, we have Yieldef, who, if your Vanguard is grade 3, allows you to counterblast 2 to draw a card. Quite a hefty cost for a draw, but if you really need it, and if your deck doesn't use counterblast, he can just sit there and keep doing this effect. He's like a cent because he was from the trial deck, and again, he's never played. This is just one of those, if you really want to draw cards and your deck doesn't use counterblast at all, he's your guy. Then following that, I would have probably we have the last two here are probably my most optimal choices if I were to play any of these for card draw. In Ensemble of Smiles of Melee, when she boosts, if you have other grade 1 or less rearguards, she gets +2 until the battle. Then, if it boosted a grade 3 or greater Vanguard, right, so as long as she's boosting Vanguard, you can counterblast 1 and soul blast 1 to draw a card. Very simple effect. Just gets your draw if she's boosting, as well as being a 10k, which maybe brings your Vanguard's total power after boosting to 23k. That means that you can hit even through 1 defensive, right, without any other power boost, obviously. She is from set 6, and she's about 20 cents. So again, not breaking the bank. You can get a whole set for less than $1. And last here, we have Tier Knight Emilios from set 8. Whenever he's placed on a rearguard with another grade 1 or less rearguard, you can soul blast 1 to draw a card and gain +5. So his effect is a little weirdly worded, but essentially you get to just, whenever you can call him over a grade 1 or less, and then you can do that effect, right? He's like 10 cents, and I do think that his effect is pretty good. Because worst case scenario, you can just keep calling them over each other, right? Given that they don't get retired, obviously. You can just keep calling him over himself, and at worst case, he's just replacing himself and giving you a 13k booster, which is pretty good. Following that, we have units that help with your board presence, starting with Knight of Friendship Cyrus, who was printed in the trial deck for Magnolia, excuse me, I almost blanked on the name there, and also in the Fresh Fox collection. He's like 5 cents, he's super cheap, but he can once per turn soul blast 2, reveal a top card, and if it's a unit, call it to rear, and if it isn't, you put it into your hand. So what do you mean if it isn't a unit, right? Well, there is a lot of orders, and Stoicheia is one of the nations that plays the most orders, which I feel like is why this video will be a little shorter, because a lot of the generic stuff in Stoicheia is orders, but we are going to be doing a separate video just on orders, so for now we will just do units, and I feel like Cyrus could be played in certain decks if your soul is not an issue, if it just sits there. Why not call Cyrus? He'll give you a card guaranteed. Following that, we have Maple. I had discussed this in the Keter video, but there is 2 Maples, the grade 1 and the grade 2. The grade 1 is from set 8, and she's like $4 per copy. She'll come back whenever your Vanguard is placed during the ride phase. As long as you're persona writing, she'll come back from the drop and gain an extra 5k. Again, you can just pick up 1 or 2, not going to break the bank there. Then following that, we have Performing Petal Diantha. She is quite expensive. She's from set 6, and she's $26 currently on TCG Player. But that price is very understandable for the triple rare. She says whenever she's placed on rearguard from hand, if your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, you can counterblast 1, choose a grade 3 or less card from your drop, and call it to rearguard. That's pretty good. Being able to call back pretty much anything back from the drop zone for a counterblast is incredible. as well as herself being able to get an extra 5. You have 2 or more grade 1 or less rearguards in your back row, which you're pretty much always going to have, right? As long as you have her and something else, because she doesn't say 2 or more other. So as long as you have 1 other grade 1 or less, she just becomes a 13k booster. Very good card. If you have them, I would hold on to them, and if you don't, and you do genuinely see yourself playing a lot of Stoicheia decks, I would recommend getting one. And then lastly here we have kind of an honorable mention in Stepping Calyx Salvia. When she's placed on rear, if your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, you can call a plant token. She's from set 5, and she's just a rare, so she's about like 10 cents, 5 cents. She's not really expensive. You're not going to have to waste a lot of money, but she just makes you a plant token whenever she's placed on rear if your Vanguard's a grade 3. That's a 13k column for 1 card. That hits Vanguard, right? Obviously that is pretty low power, but hey, it's a 1 card column. Can be pretty good if your deck doesn't want to have to be wasting resources, right? Maybe your Vanguard uses too much resources, or some of your other units. So if you just want a unit that can get power, or they can get you a board, she's for free. She just, as soon as you're on grade 3, she's live. Following that, we have counter charging and soul charging. I decided to combine them in this one specifically for the card in the middle here, Price Trident. But let's talk about that one after. So we'll talk about Soul Assault first. He has two promo printings, and he reads, when the attack this unit boosted hits a Vanguard, if it's the 3rd battle of this turn, retire this unit, countercharge 1. Very restrictive card, and I don't see how he could beat Price Trident, but I decided, hey, if you really need countercharging, maybe you would consider playing both Price Trident and Soul Assault. But with that, let's talk about Price Trident himself. He says, when your other unit attacks, if it's the 5th battle of this turn, put this unit into your soul and countercharge 1. He provides both soul and countercharge. He can do everything. If your deck can perform the 5 attacks that are required of his effect, I would say you auto-include a playset of this, because who doesn't want to have more soul and more countercharging, right? He has received 2 promo printings and was printed in set 3, and he's still only like 15 cents, right? Pick up a set. You can even get like the holo promos, right? I think in set 3 he was a common, yeah, like you can see there he was just a common, but definitely get yourself a set of these. Just right, you never know what Stoicheia deck will end up getting 5 attacks. Better just have a playset, right? And then lastly here we have Burrow Mushrooms, who can on rearguard circle put itself into soul to call 2 plant tokens. Then if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Grand Phoenix card and you choose one of your rearguards, and it gets +5. That second part of the effect is irrelevant unless you're playing Grand Fiat clearly. But he's able to make soul and replace himself with 2 units, right? So he goes into soul and then gives you 2 tokens that can just boost, right? It's also, you can just put them in 1 column. That's a 10k column, right? It can still hit grade 2s, or if you're on Persona Right, it's at 20k. You can hit a Vanguard. I believe they were printed in set 9 only, and they're about $1 a copy. I would suggest getting some of these because they can just kind of go into any deck, and if your deck just needs soul, Burrow Mushrooms, right? Let's say you can't do the 5 attacks that Price Trident requires of you, then Burrow Mushrooms is great because he is soul and he's units. He's a very good card. Moving on, we have rearguard protection, starting with Battle Siren Theodosia, who in the back row rearguard, all of your other rearguards in the same column as this unit cannot be attacked by your opponent's rearguards. This doesn't protect from retiring effects, but if your opponent isn't playing retire and maybe the rearguards aren't able to hit Van, maybe you got a trigger or something like that, they can't go after your rearguards as a way to be like, well, I can't hit Van anymore because Theodosia is protecting them. Is this effect niche? Yes, especially because I believe there is a lot of retire, but if we do start moving away from this retire heavy or removal heavy format we're in, Theodosia would be great at protecting your rearguards, right? I believe she was from set 6 exclusively, and she's like 4 cents, not even expensive to get, right? You can just get yourself a set and just kind of keep them, right? A lot of these cards are things that I believe you could just kind of have there, back in your mind, not going to cost you much. Yeah, you can just try them out here and there and see what you think. Moving on, though, we have Maiden of Deep Impression, Ursula, who allows you to move or swap rearguards within the same row, so you can move left and right, because you're only allowed to move between the same column, but with her you're able to move within the same row during the main phase, right? And then your units in front of this unit cannot be chosen by your opponent's effects, which means that you have to they have to deal with Ursula first, and then they can deal with then they have to deal with your other units, right? Again, this one is similar to Theodosia, except that this one does protect from retirement, but it doesn't protect from being attacked, right? So in a way, they're very similar in what they do. Although Ursula doesn't say back row, the way her effect is worded essentially hints at that, right? Because she says that your units in front of this unit cannot be chosen, which means she has to be behind another unit. So they could have just put back row, but it's one of those things where I feel like it was so early on in the game because she was printed in set 2, and then she just got a reprint in the 2023 Festival Collection, right? So when she was printed originally, the game had just kind of started rolling out, and they didn't really know what they wanted to do with like keywords and stuff, I guess. She's like 25 cents. Again, one of those things where you can get yourself a set for $1 and be fine. Next, let's move on to the extras. Some of these cards are ones that don't really fit any specific like grouping, so I just kind of put them here. Right, starting with Dragon Tree Wretch Bist Ayatvas, whose first effect, like I've talked about before in the other 3 videos, doesn't really matter unless you're playing Griffogilla or Dragon Tree, or a Mask deck. And Stoicheia is receiving, I believe, Magnolia Mask, and we have Leonorn Mask and Zorgo Mask. I don't know if we have any more of those. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I don't believe so. And his ability that is more interesting here is that if your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, you can counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1, and choose a normal order from your drop and put it into your hand. This card would be seen in a better light if I was talking about all the generic orders that are very good in Stoicheia, but since I'm not, it just kind of seems like, well, why do I care about orders? But believe me, it is a worthwhile effect. being able to get an order back, and things like Zorga is incredible. I believe even Leonorn uses things like that. I know Mythiarch that is coming out in set 11 might want it because they do have an order that is very good. I think he is from set 9 and he's about $7 a copy, so he is a little expensive, but I would suggest maybe picking up 1 or 2 if you can. Right, maybe wait on the prices to go down, but since there is another Stoicheia Mask unit coming out, his price might go up instead of down. And then after that, we have Knight of Pure Theodore, who says when he's discarded from hand during your ride phase, you can call it to rearguard. He's a unit that can just help you get around the whole having to lose a card to go up in the right deck. He's from the Leonorn trial deck, and he's like 5 cents, so you could just get yourself a set, or maybe go look through the book. Maybe you already own some of these cards, like this card, if you got the Leonorn trial deck, and maybe you kind of just threw it aside because you just looked up a list online. Maybe go digging for them, right? See if you like that effect, being able to not have to lose a card every time you pitch. Then we have Trigeminal Assault, who says once per turn at the end of the battle, this unit boosted, Soul Blast 2 and stand this unit. It just makes it so that you get to boost it with it twice, right? Things like Flagbird might like it, as sometimes their attacks can be a little weak, right? So you could make your unit in front have an extra 7k. Leonorn could use this effect. I mean, I know that Leonorn does restand the rear guards to be able to boost again, but with this, you could boost with the same unit 3 times. And in Leonorn, there is a way in which you can attack with same column at least 3 times. Or not 3 times, but have a unit boost 3 times. So this guy could do pretty well in there. He's from set 7. He's literally a common. You can always just go look for bulk, see what you find. And then last in the grade 1s, we have Secuse, who says when it boosts a Vanguard, you can Soul Blast 1, choose one of your opponent's grade 2 or less rear guards not being attacked, and move it to Guardian. And it cannot be moved, and then it gets +5. So this is a 10k booster, right? So similar to Melee from the card draw section, except he's able to give you removal in a sense, right? Maybe there's an annoying grade 1. Things like, I believe Bruce has like grade 1 that can give a triple drive. I know the cat from Drajult can be annoying, right? And if you can't remove it, I don't believe Stoicheia has much removal. So this would be perfect. You just force your opponent to move it up, and he gives you the shield, or he gives himself the power of the shield of the unit that you put into the Guardian Circle, which is pretty good. Although he is a 5k base, so I do believe that they maybe overestimated how strong this effect was going to be. They could have just definitely made him an 8k, and I don't believe he would have broken the game or anything like that, but they decided that he was a little too strong. And then we'll go on to the next one, who is the grade 2s. I don't know why it says grade 1s, but that's fine. The grade 2, starting with the units that make Soul, with Blooming Petal, Chirophilus. Sorry, that's a plant name, definitely. I do not know how to say it. But she says when she's placed on rear guard, if your Soul has no cards, you can Soul Charge 2. If you're constantly emptying your Soul, she can just give you 2 back, right? She was from set 3, and she's like 20 cents, because I believe she's like one of the best choices, but since she's just a rare, not really a way for them to like bring up the price too much, right? And then another card that I had actually tried in things like Leonorn was Knight of Fidelity Alfonso, who says when this unit is put on Guardian, if your back row has 2 or more grade 1 or less rear guards, you can Soul Charge 1. This works if he intercepts or if you call it from hand, right? So you're able to use him to attack and then get some soul back for his sacrifice, right? He is from set 7, and he's like 5 cents, right? You can definitely find him in your bulk. Just get a set and be like, oh, I'm gonna save these for later. See if maybe that comes out around that maybe needs a lot of soul, but isn't able to waste it all. So you can't play Blooming Petal. You got to play something different, and that's where Alfonso comes in. Following that, I guess I did forget to change the number of the grade, with Maple, who we did talk about earlier. There was being a grade 2. She's from set 5, and she's $15. She just comes back whenever your Vanguard is placed during the right phase, and she is just such a generic good card. Just being able to give you a unit constantly is great. if you pick one of these up, you can play it in both Keter and Stoicheia. Most decks only play like 1 or 2, unless you're playing the Greya herself. You play the full set, but in other decks you can just pick up 1 or 2. She's like $15 though, so maybe just pick up the 2 and try it out. Following that, we have Propolin Raphelius, who, when it's placed on rear, you can counterblast 1 and call up to 2 plant tokens to rear. She's also from set 5, and she's like $3 because she is just 3 units on 1 card. Right, that's great. You have to commit so much less to the board because she gives you 3 units. Right now, you can call her and then call another unit in front of the other plant token, and now you have 2 columns. Very good card. Very easy to proc because you just have to play her on rearguard. There's no extra hoops you got to jump through. Right. Following that, we have Connection, Ivy, and Yale. She's placed on rearguard from hand. You can Soul Blast 2, look at the top 2 cards of your deck, choose up to 1 card with grade less than or equal to your Vanguard from among them, call it to rear, and then discard the rest. This card is in here because although it does make you lose a card, there are a lot of cards in the future that are wanting for you to have more cards in drop. Right. I do believe Zorga is starting to play more into the Granblue aspect from V, and something like Anil might be perfect for that. She is a Bushiroad event promo, I believe, and she's like 15 cents. Like, literally, it's not going to cost you anything to get this card. And then following that, we have Spurring Maiden Elenia. When she's placed on rear from hand, you can counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1, choose a grade 2 or less card from your drop, call it to rear, and it gets +5. Just a unit, just recursion, right? She's just going to get you a unit back. That's great. What more can you ask for? And it gives that other unit power, right? You could call Raphelius from earlier, and then call Elenia, and you would essentially have a full board off of 2 cards, right? That's incredible, right? You don't have to waste a lot of cards from hand making your board if these 2 can just keep getting your units back. She has been printed in set 1 and has a reprint in set 9, and she's still only like 25 cents, so you're looking golden here. Then we have Tideline Dragon from set 9. He is about $3, more or less, $3 to $4. And he says, if you persona at this turn, you can Soul Blast 1 to choose one of your other units, and that unit and this unit get +10. He is able to give you so much power if you can get him off or get him out during a persona right turn. He is an extra 20k power on board for a Soul Blast. That's the insane part. It's not even like Soul Blast 2, which I feel like would be a little bit more ensemble. It's just one Soul Blast for an extra 20k power on board, right? You can give that to the column he's in, right? So if you have an 18 or an 8k booster behind him, that being 18, and then you give it the power, it'd be a 38k column. That is very annoying for your opponent to guard, right? They need to call a crit, and then they need to call another crit, right? They have to waste at least 30k shield in hand to guard that attack, right? So at worst case scenario, they have to use 2 cards. Best case scenario, they have to use more than 2 cards, right? And that's annoying enough. Or even then, you could just give power to it and Vanguard, and now you've got a 20k unit and a 23k Vanguard. Again, it's going to be great. Your opponent has to use at least a 10k to guard Tideline, right? And as 10k shields aren't as popular in Overdress, you're probably going to have to take 2 cards of your opponent's hand. And then moving on to the last unit here in the grade 2s is Love Binding Maiden Margaret, who is the Cycler. Again, the first effect is just when it's discarded during right phase, Soul Blast 1, put on the bottom, draw a card. And then the effect that is more important is when this unit is placed on rear, if you persona with this turn, counterblast 1, your opponent cannot intercept until this turn, and all of your opponent's front rearguards cannot stand during the next stand phase. This is one of the few Mega Colony type effects in Overdress. I'm hoping that we start seeing more of them. There is a very cool archetype from the manga that Silhouette and Mythiarch are from. That is sort of like a Hindu bug theme archetype that from Stoicheia that I believe might be the spiritual embodiment of Mega Colony. And I'm hoping we get that archetype soon, although I don't see it yet in the horizon. As we did just get Silhouette and Mythiarch, and we know all of the cards in set 12, and we're pretty close to knowing almost everything from set 13. I'm not hopeful for it being there, but I hope it is. All right, let's move on now to grade 3s, which I guess I just forgot to change the grades on this. I guess my quality is lacking. I will try to do better for the next one, but as it is currently about midnight where I'm at, it is very late, and I need to get this video done, so I do apologize for maybe it being a little bit more scuffed this time, but I do promise that the Dark States video will be much better. But with that, let's get into these last grade 3s. I do believe there's only 5 of them. First off is Inlet Pulse. There's no way I couldn't start with Inlet Pulse. He's probably one of the most well-known Stoicheia cards. His first effect being almost irrelevant unless you're playing Flag Break specifically. His second effect says, though, if you have, at the end of turn, if the total number of attacks this turn is 4 or more, he will move into Soul and draw a card. It's a draw, right? It's a draw that also gives you Soul. It's one of the strongest effects out there, right, for Stoicheia. If you can get 4 attacks, you're almost guaranteed they're gonna say that you should play Inlet Pulse, right? He is, although with that being true, he is very expensive. He's about $25 for the, I believe the original printing is $25, and then there's the reprint from set 9, who's $30. I might be flipping those around, but still, he's very expensive. And then the other card in the card draw section here is Clapping Dragon from the Leonore trial deck. He has a printing in the trial deck, obviously, and in the festival collection for 2023. He's 20 cents, and then he says, when he's placed on front row from hand, if your back row has 3 or more units, you can counterblast 1 and draw a card. And if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, he gets plus 10. He's pretty good, right? The only real hurdle is that you have to have 3 units in the back row, but you could always move your attacker from the opposite column or whatever, or you can place him. No, actually, you can't place him in the back row specifically. But you can move at least one of the rear guards from your front row to the back if it's still there to draw a card, and being able to get power is pretty good. Now let's move on to the final of these cards, starting with Yearful Flower Maiden Florence, who is the OT effect user from Stoicheia. We know the first effect, and then the second effect is when this unit attacks, you discard the top 2 cards of your deck to perform the following. Soul Charge 1, and this unit gets plus 5 on turn of turn. If all the cards discarded for this cost are not normal units, it gets plus 15 instead of plus 5, so it becomes a 20 AK attacker, which is pretty good. And then for removing the overtrigger from drop, you choose a unit card from your drop and put it into your hand. This is probably one of the more underwhelming effects for these types of cards, but it'd be better to get them. You know, playing 1 or 2 isn't going to kill you, and if your OT doesn't get, you draw into it or something, at least this way you have a way to get something out of that. Then following that, we have Roaming Prison Dragon, who from drop, when you play a normal order, you can call it to rear. If you call this card, perform one of the following. If it was Alchemy Magic, you perform all of it. This card can just come back, and like I've said, a lot of decks play normal orders in Stoicheia, so he's just a unit that can come back. As to what the effects are, right? The first one is that he gets plus 10, so he becomes a 15k, or he gains a critical. That's, in my opinion, probably the stronger of the effects, as you can just give this guy power. So he's a 5k he's able to do 2 damage, right? Although he is just a 5k, better imagine him with something like Tideline, right? Tideline can give him an extra 10, and then if you Persona route, he'll have an extra 10, so he'll be a 25k. With a crit, give him a booster, at least an 8k. Now you have a 33k column. That means your opponent has to waste 2 cards to guard the attack, because not even an effect front has enough shield. It would only match the number. And then we're going to end this off with Benevolent Maiden Araserith, who, when it's placed on rear from hand, if your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, you can counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1, discard the top 3 cards of your deck, choose a card from your drop, call it to rear guard if it is a grade 2 or less card, and put it into your hand if it has the same card name as your Vanguard. She can either get you a unit, or get you your Persona Ride back, or get you a Persona Ride from drop. She's pretty good. The only real drawback I can see is that she's only when she's placed from hand, and once your Vanguard's at grade 3, but I mean that's kind of what you want, because you're only really trying to get Persona Rides back. I do still believe this effect is pretty good. She's from set 7, she's like $1, so not really going to break the bank here. I would say definitely pick up a set and just kind of try it out, maybe in a deck that you want to guarantee Persona Rides. She'll be perfect. But with that, this has been Leo from the Making This Place channel, and I hope you are enjoying this series so far. Thank you all, and have a nice day.